Okay, 6:03. I said 3 minutes in, we will kick off. We will respect the folks that have joined us on time. So first, thank you all, everyone, for joining us for this, what will be a very interesting session. And from whichever city, country you're joining, welcome. We have some illustrious guests here who will share their perspectives on, frankly, an age-old problem. My name is Ricky. I founded a company called Alteus, and we help small companies go to market, scale up in the Asia Pacific region. We're proud to be working closely with Nektar. Me personally, I've actually been in revenue leadership roles for 20 plus years. I won't go beyond that. But the problem statement we are speaking about is something I've personally faced for all of those years. And I'm so glad that we have today a session where we will both hear from experts in the industry about how they're solving this problem, and also from the technology side on how some companies have approached this. So when I just sort of frame it, decay in CRM has been something that's been going on for a while. And on the one hand, people expect GTM telemetry to be entered into the system of record, in this conversation, Salesforce, by the sales folks. And the sales folks do not ever want to do it. I've never managed to successfully force the sales teams to manually enter data. And I'm very glad for it, because their job is customers. But as a result, the data remains incomplete, wrong. You don't get a good perspective of where the energy of the organization has gone, what the forecast should be, what the client engagement is. And as a result, we make decisions based on incomplete information, inaccurate information, and frankly, in many cases, make wrong decisions. And if anyone wants to check me out on LinkedIn, I've worked with some fairly large organizations, and I have to be honest, I've faced these problems myself, and I've suffered from some of these gaps. So today we have three people who will share their perspectives. So let me very quickly introduce Sravan, Shantanu, and Abhijeet, who will come from slightly different perspectives, but all from the area of revenue ops and how to solve this CRM decay issue. Before we ask each of them to introduce themselves and their organizations, one quick admin issue. We have the chat window open. So if you do want to pose any question to any of these folks, please do put it on the chat, and I will play my role as moderator and read it out. I'm not expecting them to be looking at this. Shravan, first from you, if you could introduce yourself, and then Shantanu, and then Abhijeet.
Hey folks, I'm Sravan. I'm part of MoEngage. MoEngage is a customer engagement platform, right? The cross-channel marketing MarTech platform. I've been in SaaS for almost 13 plus years now, and I've been doing some sort of an op role for almost 10 plus years now. Yeah, over to you, Shantanu.
Thanks, Shravan. So hi everyone, I'm Shantanu. I'm actually dialing in from Dublin, Ireland. I work at Personio, which is a German HR tech company. Think of it a bit like Rippling, but German. And I have now been in revenue operations for the last 10 years in SaaS as well. In a past life, I used to be a management consultant. But since I've joined SaaS, I've pretty much been in RevOps across a bunch of different companies. I started at LinkedIn, which obviously was even before it got acquired by Microsoft, but now is a massive SaaS lighthouse, I would say. In the period between then and Personio, I've been at two other companies, including Gong, which I'm hoping all of, and also a smaller $50 million ARR company called Nitro. But yeah, excited to really see where RevOps as a function is heading, and especially in the world of AI-powered go-to-market, just the impact of data on what we do is really, really critical now. So excited to be here. And over to, I think, Abhijeet.
Yeah, thanks, Shantanu. Thanks, Ricky, for moderating and hosting us here. Hi, everyone. I'm Abhijeet Vijayvergiya. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Nektar.ai, joining in from Singapore today. Nektar.ai, think of it as a customer brain for AI agents. We bring in all the lost customer data that doesn't make its way into CRM, into the system of record, and power it back into your data warehouse as well as your AI agents. So you have the right context as you start deploying your AI and RevOps tools. We work with companies like Brex, ChainGuard, Cursor. MoEngage is one of our customers as well. Over 50 plus customers across the globe. Super excited to share our perspective today.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for all three of you for participating. One more comment to the audience is, if you want to just put in your chat your area, your background, whether it's revenue team, sales, RevOps, or it's customer success, or it's marketing, or it's pre-sales technical. The challenge of the problem statement of GTM telemetry gaps, the gaps in the customer brain, in the system of record, is not just felt by the sales and revenue teams. I've actually led all of these functions across companies such as Microsoft, Google, Zoom more recently, before that Oracle, and all of these functions face the problem around the gap in actually the system of record. So with that, I'm going to kick off. So Shantanu, first to you. So as you said, you run RevOps for some very cool companies. You mentioned LinkedIn, you mentioned Personio, now Gong, certainly very cool companies. I would love to hear you describe this CRM data problem, I guess in its most honest form, not the sanitized version, not the well wordsmith version. What is the problem created by this?
And I'll be very honest. Thanks, Ricky. So I think the way I think about the CRM and where the CRM started, it's basically a system of compliance, right? It's almost like executives need some data to be entered. If I'm a sales rep, I think of the data entry like a tax. I mentioned compliance. And I want to just enter enough information that I can bypass the roadblocks. Here's the 5 mandatory fields I need to fill to open a quote, right? So what basically happens because of that is the CRM just degrades into something which is almost like a inaccurate fallacy, essentially. And the reason that is a challenge is we use it like it's a predictive navigation tool. So the difference between the two, and I have been guilty of, everyone here who's used CRM different ways, that is the true north partially on how we make decisions. And then the risk, I think you mentioned the risk on what's happening because of that in our overall data foundation is we end up making decisions. I'll take one example, right? So let's say you're forecasting, let's say you're thinking about the year and where you're going to invest money. Oh, wait, this specific piece is working, this product that I have, or this ICP segment that I'm looking at, it's working great. But in reality, you might have had a lot of ghost pipeline, which had wrong indicators. You end up having different data points. If you talk to the salesperson versus the marketing team versus even finance, and you end up having arguments about which data is correct. And in the long run, you end up making wrong decisions. So it's at its very core, you said the honest, unvarnished version, what's happening is reps are putting in data, which is helping them move on with their job, but it's not helping us make accurate decisions.
Yeah, no, I think it's fair. Not great decision-making opportunities and actually wrong decisions. Sravan, for you, from your perspective in MoEngage, what was the problem statement for y'all? And actually, if you can double click on who in the organization was feeling it most.
No, I think a bad CRM or as a decaying CRM is a pain point for everybody. Right? The pain is obviously felt at the managers who wants to raise things and give some guidance in their outcomes. Pain is even felt by sellers, right? And especially somebody who's coming in midway, right? Or somebody who's even in the sales support as well, right? From a pre-sales or any other folks, there's a significant pain that they feel as well, right? Them not being in loop about everything else. And ops feels it constantly because we're the last people to know, right? When the decay is here. But yeah, it's right. It's the same thing right now. That was right. The pipeline reviews essentially in that scenario start becoming not just a deal. It start adding deal cleaning sessions partially, right? It's 15 minutes of deal cleanup, and then there is a 30-minute call run deal conversation, right? So that was a predominant problem, and the person end up chasing all of this would be an ops team member trying to scrub everything out before the next call, and then still be caught out, right, in that call about the couple of two or three things, the deals where things are wrong.
So I mean, you're double clicking on Sravan. The ops team has to end up carrying a lot of the burden of the workload because of the fundamental gap and the chasm in the data, because of the expectation of sales teams going in. If I can just add one thing that I've found from my experience that just lifts it up a little bit beyond that, in addition to that, one of the pain points that was always fed back to me was because a lot of the output and work that teams were doing, cross-functional teams were doing related to a customer, related to an opportunity or a deal, because all of that was sitting inside various systems, being it inside a calendar in terms of hours worked or inside of work around the content for proposals, or it could have been inside task management systems, and that was never actually coming back. A lot of the cross-functional teams, be it pre-sales, be it customer success, were never able to demonstrate amount of work they've done in order to win a client. So their contribution was lost or was not captured. And there was a lot of frustration that created a lot of cross-border, when I say cross-border, cross-functional border conflicts. But back to you, Sravan. You mentioned the challenge around the whole RevOps situation. Before Nektar, you all implemented Nektar. What was the daily reality for your team? What were you flying blind on, and how often did it show up in the pipeline reviews or deal reviews? Or
To be honest, it was almost a recurring thing, right? And at some everybody just starts to hold a piece that this is just the reality that they have to work with, right? Which is an unfortunate place to be at, right? So, and there was a significant part that that added significant mental load would just be that the stress around that this all starts getting anchored towards one call a week, right? And to get every system updated just before that one call a week, and then anytime if there's any question or if there's some context that's needed between the next call and between the two calls, then it's just everybody's scrambling, right? Nobody has the most real version of truth, and you're just caught with your flat feet up.
Got it. I mean, I think again, you're flying blind, as you're saying, and when you're flying blind, you're making bad decisions that affects the actual revenue of the company in terms of either forecast or real revenue, and that's quite traumatic for a lot of folks. I'm going to throw this question to the panel. Shantanu, we'd love to hear from you. Abhijeet, I would love to hear from you also. I mean, look, most companies know, as I said, this is an age-old problem. Nothing new in terms of the problem statement. Most companies know, especially in our sector, being the tech sector, that CRM hygiene is a problem. But mostly everyone treats it as an inconvenience, not a real business risk. I would love to hear if there's any data out there. What does the data tell you about how much this actually costs in terms of revenue to the team and missed deals and so on? What does the data tell us? Shantanu, I don't know, Abhijeet, if you've got some data, I'd love to hear from both of you.
Shantanu, you want to go first, or?
You can go first. I'll go after you.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So I think on a data standpoint, I came across this study, Ricky, which was done by BCG in 2020. It's called the revenue leakage. I mean, you can Google it up. I'll also drop the link to the study on the chat as well. And that study was pretty revealing. They studied a lot of enterprises, which they consult with, to just understand the impact of poor data infrastructure, poor systems, efficiencies that happens across sales and marketing processes. And around 45% of the businesses they work with admitted that revenue leakage was a consistent and a recurring problem. And the scale was attributed to be around $2 trillion across the world, which seems to be like pretty absurd, large number. But if you break it down to an individual organization, that comes out to be around 30 to 50% of the budgets in sales and marketing getting wasted due to this poor foundation. And now with AI coming in, with companies are blowing a lot of money in tokens and trying to buy the next shiny AI tool and putting it on top of everybody's system, this problem gets further amplified because bad data is just going to make AI work at machine speed in the wrong direction. And this is like going to further impact the workflows, the trust that's needed in the insights that you need from the AI systems. So yeah, I think that I felt it was a relevant study. I'll drop a link as well here for everyone. There's like a lot more analysis that they have done as part of this. And again, it was done 2023, I would say pre-enterprise AI, but I think it's still relevant.
Okay. Shantanu, what would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I think really good data. The only other piece I'll add maybe is you've all probably heard of this data point around how much sales reps actually spend time on customer facing activity versus non-customer facing. And again, I think Abhijeet, you made a very good point about the age of AI is obviously helping us accelerate, right? I mean, We're all talking about the 10x engineer, the 10x salesperson, and how do we do that? But at the core of it, because of bad data, we might end up spending a lot of time on actually trying to scale processes which is based on wrong information. So there was a study from Zoom Info in terms of the numbers, and I was trying to find the exact number, but they actually reported that sales reps spend about 27% of their time dealing with inaccurate data. And that's, if you try and translate that into the number of hours that a person works, you're talking about close to 500 hours per rep per year. That's about 13 working. That's one full quarter of their time they spend looking at long numbers. They're looking at records which actually stale. They're trying to update that, verifying information, because think about this, right? We actually, and a very tactical example to make this come alive. I'm a customer of a certain company. I won't name names, but their SDR just reached out to me saying, hey, we're literally a prospecting email came into me. And I got back and saying, hey, we are your customers, right? So that happens at scale. Think about what that might have had in terms of their prospecting score, all those pieces. So if I bring all of this together, basically a rep is spending a quarter, according to ZoomInfo, just chasing wrong data and trying to fix that. So we don't want to scale that problem.
And if I can just add to that question, Shantanu, I mean, at what point in your career did this kind of become clearer to you that this is not just an ops headache,
yes,
and it is really a very direct revenue risk?
Yes. So I think I won't again name names. One of the companies I was in a few years ago, we actually used data which was inaccurate in terms of rep activity, conversion rates, because you bring all again, and there's a combination of of data points which could be wrong on activity, it could be on data which you actually get in terms of opportunity progression. And we made a decision to actually go into a certain market where we thought we had significant demand being generated. But when we realized after going in, we actually spent almost a year and we had to actually pull out of that market, having hired a lot of people in who are not hitting quota because we didn't have true demand. It was just inaccurate data. So that's a very simple, but was a very large impact just in terms of the cost that it bore. And the moment you start having wrong data, that's why I brought up in the first question, wrong data driving decisions which change the way you're actually allocating scarce resources. We're all working in an economy where every dollar being spent is being scrutinized 5 ways to Sunday. In that, if you are actually making a decision based on wrong data, you end up, the sunk cost is just too high to bear right now.
Okay, which it makes sense. Look, it makes sense. And I think we've all kind of spoken a fair bit about this, that the problem sits at the intersection of sales, RevOps, part of the CRO organization, but also the referred pain is felt by other parts of the organization, being pre-sales, being customer success, being potentially even the CMO office, because everyone is using that data to make decisions about the business. I guess I think we've talked a fair bit about the problem statement, and I think it's bad enough, and it's been going on for a long time. And to some extent, one of the things I said to Abhijeet when we first met was, this is a problem that only AI tech can solve and will solve. Right? It is not going to be solved by throwing more humans at it. If it could be, it would have been solved. People like me would have solved it in the past. But you can't just throw more humans at this problem. So it's going to be using tech and AI in particular. So on that note, we will talk to Abhijeet a little bit about what's he actually built. But you know what I might do? I might flip a couple. I might throw to you, Abhijeet, first and ask you to walk us through really what Nektar has, how Nektar works in plain terms, not the pitch, just in more plain terms. How does it work? And then, Sravan, I would love to hear from you a little bit about how it works for you inside of MoEngage.
Great. Let me just share my screen to give everybody a perspective. Let me know once you have a visual here. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So I think just to give a quick summary about like how Nektar works, think of it as a customer brain for your AI agents. So it will basically capture all your emails, calendars, meetings that your reps are doing with specific stakeholders. Will integrate with your conversation recording systems like Gong, Zoom, Google Meet, or Teams. It will also go and take in the data from your Slack and Teams channels that you have with your customers. It will also scan your Salesforce to establish the current record of truth. And it will then, on top of it, build a customer context layer. So think of it like a relationship graph. and a memory about what's happened in the history with the customer and what's going to happen in future based on what we see across these touch points. And once this customer brain is developed, that brain then connects back into your downstream systems, which include Salesforce, and it starts filling gaps in Salesforce. It will connect with your Snowflake system to fill gaps in your data warehouse around your customer context. And then it will also connect with Claude, with ChatGPT, with other agentic systems through MCP, so that you can query that data and you can leverage that data for getting the right insights or writing the right workflows. And if I had to break it down in the platform, it has two layers. First is the relationship telemetry layer, where it will capture things like, in RevOps terms, like opportunity contacts, activities, tasks, different buyer personas who are getting involved, different types of meetings people are doing with the different stakeholders. Are the stakeholders showing up in the meeting? Are the people meeting with the reps in person or it's virtual? And all of this with like advanced gating and data controls. So you don't create a noise. For example, if you're hosting a webinar and there are 20 people in the call, you might not want to add all those into your system. You might only want to add the contextual economic sponsor, technical buyer, so on and so forth. So we leverage a lot of AI to like build this and update it. And then there is an advanced layer of Daisy, which is Daisy stands for Deep AI Signals for You, which has a library of over 30 plus signals, which are available for you to use to generate different signals for your AI systems. And I'll give some examples as well. Things like updating the entire metric process or next steps or key objections in the deal, what product has been like discussed across the conversations, key risk, infosec objections, so on and so forth. So there's a set library that's available. If I have to go into the system to show you, you see something like this, where there's a revenue signal library. You can pick and choose as a RevOps person what signals you want to harvest from here. This is all connected to your backend communication systems that I talked about. And it's also by objective or by opportunity object or account object. So a lot of these are like pre-built for you to use, or you can always request a new signal. And the way a new signal gets requested is fairly straightforward. You can actually look at the business objective. You can basically talk to our agent, just like vibe coding, where you can define what you want to do. In this example, it is looking at risk commit for forecasting. So you can give your prompt here. The AI agent will go and look at all the data. It will come up with like the right deals to test it on. Once you have tested it on, you validate it, you can choose to create a native field in Salesforce or create an overview tab or like send it as a Slack alert. And once you okay it, this will show up here and will populate the data in your system directly. So in this case, Salesforce. So just to go deeper into this, like an example would be a meeting that's taking place. So there are different signals in a meeting, right? Whether the meeting was virtual or in person, that can be updated by the agent. How long the meeting lasted, what type of meeting it was. Was it demo? Was it discovery? Was it negotiation? Was it a new business meeting? Who was the sender? Was it organized by us, organized by the customer? What product was discussed? Who attended the meeting internally and externally? All of that get tagged. Did the executive decision maker showed up for the meeting or not? Internally, who were the solution engineers joining the meeting, so that you can attribute the time taken. So this is one way to populate the data, where you do signals harvesting and you update your Salesforce standard and custom fields, which takes a lot of time for reps to update. Or you can also have an agent which can work within your Salesforce interface, where agent can actually summarize all the key information across your, not just what happened in the meeting, but in between the meetings across emails, calendars, and Slack messages. So the summary from the last 14 days, the story so far in the account, key facts, key risk. So even if your account gets handed over to a new rep, you have a quick context, or your leader can just get a quick context on what's the deal summary. The same thing can go on Slack as well. Same thing is available within your Salesforce. So that's how like Nektar typically works at a broad level, but it goes deeper into relationships, where you can see who are the buying group members that you are interacting with and who are the missing buying group members. Because especially for like multi-threaded deals where you have complex sales motion, you'd want to make sure that you know each and every touch point on who reps are talking with, who is involved, what's the engagement level, and all of that again is living within Salesforce. You don't have to leave the system. So the idea here is like not to throw another UI, but use what you have, which is in this case Salesforce, or your AI systems like Claude or ChatGPT, where the signals can be updated in your core system like Salesforce, and you can expose it to your AI agent. So same information can be query using Claude where you can chat with the data and all. So that in a nutshell is like how it works. Happy to like set up detailed demo for anyone who would be interested later on. But I hope this gives a good perspective.
It does. Thank you for that, Abhijeet. And Sravan, I'm going to ask you this question. And Rajesh has made a comment, and we'll come back to that comment in a few minutes. But I wanted to just take the same track for a second and hear from you from your organizational perspective, having implemented Nektar, day to day, what aspect of your problems does it solve effectively for your team? And where do you think there's room for it to push further?
I think for us, probably the best thing that came out of it is that with the ops team, it reduced the burden on ops team to start bringing in behavioral interventions, right? Smaller checks, balances to see if somebody's updated a couple of things, or go back and reward the person who's updated everything the most, right? All of this goes background. And one thing that we can rather do is that we remove the entire burden of updating and have the reps and have everything that's already available, right, in the CRM, and only pass on the burden of for it to be correct, right? That relieves a lot of mental load for the sellers, right? It just is not something, right? They don't have to show up to a call. They don't have to go into right on a day, right? Or for a commit deal, they don't have to work through trying to think about saying that, how do I keep the rest of the team updated? They just continue to do what they do, and everything else that's available back on the CRM, right? And I think another one that that really helped us, I feel deeply valued, is that it's real time, right? We have sellers that's across the time zone, all the way, say, from Philippines to Brazil, and a CRO that's sitting in different airports across the world, right? And doesn't have to be dependent on sellers or on those contexts. And he can just log back into the CRM, and he has the same view that probably the seller on ground has. So these two things, I think, big thing that ended up happening is that, it starts becoming that there is a context layer. That we've essentially established the right context layer effectively in the CRM, and that, I think, is as everybody's alluding to, right, in the age of AI, that context layer is continuing to just unlock a lot of value for us.
Okay, so Sravan, what you're saying is, one is pure productivity at the rep level because they don't have to do the work, and obviously they spend more of their time meeting clients and external engagement. But the second one is the context layer, where you're getting deep insights, which helps the revenue leadership, the CRO, make better calls in terms of potentially pipeline deals and all that. When you have to balance both of them off, do you have a point of view which is more important than the other, and how would you toss that coin?
I think I would say both the cornerstones right now, right? A couple of years ago, maybe the cornerstone would be productivity and the unlock that is there, but it's hard not to identify. While that is still being serviced, we are just being able to now, in the age of AI, to effectively do a context layer, right? That's any agentic, right now, any agentic sales process right now, or agents in sales, you would be able to do any of this only with a good and viable context layer. So I would say both of them are turning out to be good cornerstones. Yeah, right. Maybe in a future where it's purely agent-led sales, maybe right, productivity is not really the viewpoint, but then the context layer comes in.
Absolutely. So I'm going to bring the entire panel into the comment made by Rajesh, which he says when nearly 30% of CRM data becomes obsolete every 12 months by AOP, the existing pipeline is basically a museum of expiring deals. And with agents, we are looking at a very confident co-worker that is amplifying this existing behavior. I'd love to get, Shantanu, maybe we haven't heard from you for a few minutes, so I would love to get your perspective on that comment.
Yeah, that's exactly, I think that's a lot connected to what I said in the beginning, which is AI can be a very confident but incompetent coworker if you feed it wrong data, right? And I think that's where it's so important to have the right valid information inside whatever you're throwing AI agents on. So for instance, and by my company just went about a month ago, we've now got Claude across the entire organization. And I actually I'm already seeing that we're trying to govern that at a way where we have all these grassroots build being done. We're trying to almost have 3 tiers where what we are building from RevOps comes in and is like, here's like a standard which flows down and we have ideas flowing in. The problem is almost every pipeline meeting I'm going into, someone has their own data point right now. It's almost like 10, 15 years ago, everybody used to come with their own spreadsheet. Now everybody's coming in with their own AI agent. And if you don't have, and I think I love how Sravan talked about the entire context layer and bringing that layers that you're getting through Nektar together, we need to figure out something like that. Is how do you really have a very, very robust and clear starting point? Because without that, it's all going to be my data versus yours, and that's not going to add any efficiency to the system. Yeah.
Abhijeet, anything you want to add to that comment?
Yeah, I was recalling what Sridhar Ramaswamy, the CEO of Snowflake, recently said, that there is no AI strategy without a data strategy. I think that's pretty paramount. It hits really hard, especially when companies are deploying AI agents at scale. And it's happening globally. I think it's not just limited to one market or a specific set of companies. And across the board, across industries, even like traditional legacy industries as well are adopting AI. And I think the easiest thing everybody thinks is, okay, let's just like buy Claude or OpenAI licenses for everybody in the company, and they can chat with like the organization data. You can connect your emails, you can connect with your Slack, you can connect with your Google Drive, and magic will happen. But it doesn't, right? Shravan made a very good point around context layer, right? I think that's where AI will start hallucination. And what you also are ignoring is the cost. One of the other days, I was talking to a founder of a pre-IPO company. One of their sales rep burned through $25,000 worth of tokens in a month by just getting too excited and chatting with the system. So there is the context issue. There is also the cost issue. So there's also like how you engineer that data, right, which connects with your AI system. That's also equally important. One of the things that customers see value in what we do is we're not just giving the raw data. We're actually, as I was showing earlier in the demo, we convert the raw data into signals. Like, let's say, for example, account history and account summary. Now that account summary across your 300 accounts for the last 5 years could be very valuable input and optimize input for Claude, versus let's say you ask Claude to go and scan 3 years of your historical emails and call recordings and all your Salesforce, and then try to like get a contextual insight done, right? So the cost and tokens would be a lot more. So I think my viewpoint to this is like the decay problem is real, as Rajesh mentioned in his comment. RevOps is at the forefront of like managing some of this data updates in Salesforce. But with AI as a co-worker for them, I think it's easier to manage. But the problem is with the proliferation of AI in the front end and the need and urgency at a board level to adopt AI, like a lot of companies are rushing to implement AI before they are getting the data strategy right. So that's like the word of caution, I think, where you need to balance your data strategy with your AI strategy. Yeah.
Makes sense. Shravan, anything you want to add? I've got another question for you.
No, I think on the same lines, right? That the way we're thinking about it is that there is an infra, right? And there's an AI infra that needs to be maintained from ops, right?
Yeah.
And the only instrument that we can wield is a context layer. So getting this as a responsibility that we need to carry, and with an effective context layer is an infrastructure problem and something that ops team needs to be aligned on.
Okay. And again, in terms of the same thread we take on, so Shravan, in your case, you're as an end customer, you're an end customer of Nektar. It's easy to talk about the value that is coming out from the productivity layer and the contextual layer, but what did implementation look like? Did it take you years to implement this stuff with a lot of heartaches? How did it happen?
No, I think that thankfully Abhijeet and Nektar were thinking about headless experiences before headless became a thing, because it was a fairly easy implementation for us. It did not require, the best part about it is that I did not have to go train anybody else about it, right? And it was something that we just had to configure, right? Sit down with our IT team and just have things configured. And once it was in, like it was pretty much seamless, right? In terms of historical data, even 3-year-old conversations were starting, and an old opportunity that nobody had any updates on suddenly had a lot of activity, right? So that was fairly, I think that was fairly easy, and it continues to be as well, right? Now we bring in a new rep. It's not, we trained he or she on a bunch of different tools. Thankfully, there's not one more tool in terms of how they need to add updates, and we just switch it on. And the next day, once you start selling, once you start emailing, once the calendar starts flooding up, right now it's back on the CRM.
So how long did it take you?
It's fairly seamless. I think we did this in a couple of weeks, right? It just needed a couple of right? Just mapping in terms of mailboxes, in terms of workspaces. And it was, and the only people that were needed on this was somebody from Ops, somebody from IT, and somebody from Nektar. And that was it. And it didn't have anything else in it.
So 2-3 people, couple of weeks, and you were able to start seeing cleaner data, making better decisions with the AI agents doing with the data coming in from the Nektar solution. Okay, Shantanu, let me bring you into the conversation. When from your perspective, been with RevOps at a few companies, and at the end of the day, in most of the tech world, the problem is felt by everyone, but the problem is owned by RevOps. RevOps owns the fix. Everyone faces the problem, but at the end of the day, RevOps owns the fix and has to go and do the due diligence on the different ways to solve it and all that, and so on. So I'd love to get your take on when you finally fix the problem or fix parts of the problem. You'll never get to the end journey. I mean, it's a journey, not a destination in some ways. Tell us what gets unlocked. What's the benefits you see or have seen? What are the compounding benefits?
Great, fantastic. I think, and by the way, first of all, I think the responsibility being with RevOps, and that's absolute non-negotiable. That's the role we hope to play. And again, in an ideal world, if RevOps is running well, that's something directly in the CEO's mind, the CXOs, and that's how we're setting up. If I think about the benefits, Ricky, I would think about, and I will almost think about every unit, and the impact should be across the board. The first unit which actually gets that positive impact, I would say, is even at that rep level. Abhijeet mentioned a very good example about how do you use signals at the right level of altitude. And what I mean by that is every single rep in their conversation with the managers, in a world where data is not set up in the way it should be, and you don't have the semantic layer and the infrastructure really built in, they probably spend a lot of time trying to figure out which account should I be looking at? Where do I go in for? But if you have everything built in, one signal which we use a lot is, for example, we have account propensity scores, account intent scores, using contact information as well, right? In those conversations, the rep and the manager are then just looking at, oh, I know these are the 10 I'm going after. It's more, the conversation goes from an altitude of tactical identification to more strategic opportunities. Oh, in this contact, what should I be doing? On this account, how will I get there? So I think that up levels the conversation at the rep level. And then broader, if I just go back into more of a company level, the benefit you get, you start getting true feedback loops back from the customer. So the moment you have your entire data and AI strategy in one working seamlessly, you should not have product second guessing what the go-to-market or CRM or the revenue team is bringing in, because that should be data which everyone believes in. That should be something everyone has access to, and it's one coherent story which product is then building the entire roadmap on, the entire piece on how that is being shipped, what's being enabled, and what eventually people are talking to customers. That loop gets clean, clear, and everyone is aligned. So that's the ideal benefit you get to, but in the end, you have to have RevOps drive it at the center.
Let me stay with you, Shantanu, and sort of look at the flip side of that coin and say, what's the most common mistakes you see companies make when they try to fix their problem on their own before they have the right tooling? I mean, what have you seen?
Yeah, I think I'll go back to what I said. I think, unfortunately, when you're trying to build and buy is a big conversation right now. The AI conversation, the data conversation, build and buy is just coming together into one big piece. I think when you try to fix internally, you're trying to think about, are we fixing the right problem? Because you start thinking about cost of buying something versus building as a very siloed problem, versus it's not just what you're spending now, it's the total cost of ownership. It's the downtime which comes from not having the right piece done. it also then triggers a cycle where you have manual data entry probably being done by people who should have probably been using that time to do something even more valuable. So that entire trade-off of who has the admin overhead, where is the friction, what are you doing in terms of, and I go back to the time of customer facing time for your frontline versus them trying to be inputs into building something which companies like Nektar have already got out there. Just the unseen cost of building something is something which I think a lot of companies are trying to figure out right now. But I think I have a very simple framework on if it is very, very core to what you need to solve for, and there are companies who've been using this and are successful, we should just literally think about the longer term cost and ROI versus making an entire, what's the word, the carousel go around the company where you're trying to pick small pieces and really impact things beyond that project. So long story short, the big mistake I've seen is how do you really leverage what others have done and solve before you try to reinvent the wheel?
Yeah, makes a lot of sense, Shantanu. Makes a lot of sense. Shravan, I go to you. Give us a little bit about before and after. Two things in one. First, give us a little bit of context of before and after. What could you not do? What were you doing better after? You've sort of said high-level productivity and contextual, but break it down for us in some detail. We got a bunch of folks here who are in the world of RevOps and are eagerly listening. And the second is you've been a customer for 5+ years of Nektar, right? I mean, and how's this relationship changed over time? And how has your use of the product changed?
Yeah, no, thankfully we've been with Nektar for some time. So the before version is pre-AI and the post version is, the current version is post-AI. So, and thankfully Nektar plays a strong role in both. I think the pre-element for us was that was 70% productive at max, right? With only 8 to 10 deals, like has something that's actionable. There's an actionable item that or an output that is with the cell, with the manager, with the VP, and with the seller being there, right? And they're able to get some actionable for step for 7 out of 10 deals, and then there are 3 that's just absolutely stuck, right? And this is the burden that we had to live with, and in a way that became like a status quo in terms of just the way that every day is. Thankfully, that is something that we were able to get out of, right? Immediately, something that happened was that, as I said, you just didn't need a rep to come in every single time. A lot of times, right, who's responsible or who's seeking answers does have a point of view or does have a place to go back and fetch answers, right? But the current method right now, that's a much larger value that I see right now is that you're able to start mine the CRM for a lot more better outcomes, right? The elements such as things that we're trying to build out is that for a complex product like us, where it involves significant context that we map in, we build out related to a single company in terms of right now flipping their entire marketing stack. All of that sits down right now. All of it is present inside the CRM. We're able to structure this very neatly to a person who's not in the deal at all, an implementation manager who's jumping in right now cold, but has to start like taking on a very warm relationship, right, and not have any mess ups and be equally onboarded on it. These are things that we're able to do, right? Like a neat handover document that we're able to generate that's immediately effective for an implementation manager. Is now starting to do even further things, right? Maybe even mine 3-year-old opportunities to see if there's a client that talked about exploring a new channel, exploring a new app right now, and that's something that we've never addressed. And now we have a new rep that's come on board, right, and that's in charge, that's looking at the farming motion, is not really keen on right now, is looking at both the renewal and getting something extra. These are things that we are able to flag for this person and not be dependent on a KT or not be dependent on the old person or any tribal knowledge that's inside, right? So there's a lot of these value unlocks that we're able to do. And yeah, that's, I would say, is like a bigger unlock that we're able to see right now.
That's great. That's great. I have one question left, but if somebody does have a question, please do put it on the chat. Thank you, Rajesh, for your active comments. Much appreciated. And there's one for you, Shantanu. Please have a read of that. While everyone is filling out the form, to the panel, to everyone, each one of you, there's a broader conversation happening right now, really about AI in revenue teams. Ops leaders, you've been asked to deploy AI initiatives, but many are discovering that the AI that the data layer is not really ready believed. I come from it from the revenue leadership's point of view, where at the end of the day, the goal is all elements of pipeline revenue and customer success leading to cross-sell, upsell, customer success leading to renewals and so on. But I would love to hear from you. What do you think about the RevOps responsibility to own that context and data infrastructure layer? What happens when the AI initiatives are missing? That's a question I'm going to throw to each one of you. We have 8 minutes left, so I'm going to pause on that since we have an audience question. And I think the audience questions are more important. Dakshita asks one question where she says, where have you seen AI create most value in RevOps and where has it fallen short? Where do you suggest to not use AI? We'll go with that question. In fact, that's a better question than what I've got here. Shantanu, maybe you start. Sravan, I would love to hear from you. And then Abhijeet, you can close us out.
Super. Thanks for the question, Dakshita. So I think the multiple ways in which AI is helping again, and I think it's, if I almost think about the last 2-3 years, we've gone from chat-based, activity-based, insight-based to now it's almost what are the workflows that AI is helping drive a lot more value on. And if I think about, and I'm putting the lens of RevOps for our own work versus what's happening for driving go-to-market and benefit for our own work. Like literally this morning, we have I'll give you an example. We have something called a roster, which is basically a capacity tracker. We keep track of all the different roles that we have in the go-to-market organization, how many people are in seat. We typically had managers flag who they know are attrition risks, try and bake in hiring time, and always have a quota coverage capacity model, right? If I think about that now, I'm sure you've all seen certain versions of it. We've now taken all of that. Used to be a spreadsheet, which used to always break. It used to be connected to what we used to then put on quota files and so on. We now have all of that built using an AI foundation, and that interfaces with our HR tool. It interfaces with our commissions tool. It interfaces, and everything is now, and it goes via Slack to the manager saying, "Hey, you have these people. Is that correct?" It's so much, that entire workflow of data input. And again, this is not even customer facing data. I'm talking about how it's making our lives as RevOps easier. That entire workflow of building that piece and taking it all the way up to, say, the monthly discussion with the CRO and where we are in capacity has become so simplified, where people spend hours on it. Now it's all done by just responding to Slack. So that's like, it's been a massive, massive impact. And many more examples of that, just making our life simpler that I can bring in. Where I'd suggest not to use AI, I think we've all been there where we've gone into a meeting and there's a 25-page deck or document thrown at us, which we know has come from AI slop. Because I think, as I said earlier, AI is a very, very confident, highly confident, but incompetent colleague in some cases. So I would say, especially when you're trying to get to a decision, definitely use it to pressure test your pieces. But if you can make sure that any decision-making piece or document to drive, try and use less of AI there, because it's not valuable. It's often insights which could be very surface level, but don't actually have deeper meaning sometimes. So that's what I would not use AI.
Okay, I'm going to ask Sravan, then I'm going to ask Nikunj's question. So Sravan, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think what's working for us right now, obviously, like in the 3 years, AI has changed quite a bit, right? Like what's working really well for us is we're starting to build very pointed agents that can bring something to the table, right? And it could be very specific. Right now, we're building out something like an account lens, right? That there's a demo set up on the setup on the A's calendar. We look through what the company is, get every possible info, marry that with the battle cards that we already have, right? Take in the CRM context that is past CRM context, right? And then create a soundbite that says, here's how you need to prep for the call, right? And you spoke to company X, they had a POC in 2 years ago. The reasons they evaluated was this, and and how you'd want to address that. These are agents, right? We've built out things like re-engagement agents, right? These are agents that could that mine the CRM in terms of old opportunities, leads, right? Looks in general, keeps running every day and tries to which the leads that make most sense to go after right now, that's able to see if anybody's talked about it. June's a decision month, right? We have swapped in the month of May, whatever this could be. These are things that this is a very, very pointed agent that looks at everything that's in the CRM and just starts assigning tasks to people at the start of the week, right? So And when not to use AI, I would say it's not for me, the way I'm thinking about it is not a more theoretical way, rather that you start to implement AI with evals going in, right? You need to look at saying that you cannot switch on the button and expect everything to keep working. You need to ensure, right now, have enough test runs, right now, validations, right now, and human in loop before you make it entirely autonomous, right? So you need to test that, the very hands-on testing for the first 10 runs, then a little bit of a retro analysis for the next 50, and then you'd want to turn this back on, right? Or turn this fully on, right? Or else you wouldn't know when it's not working, and you wouldn't know why it's not working, right? So that's how I would say to look at it. Right?
Thank you, Sravan. Thank you, Shantanu and Sravan. I'm going to throw the next two questions to Abhijeet, to you. You spend a lot of your personal time, attention. You've been a second-time founder, maybe third, but let's just say second-time founder, building this thing. So you must be passionate about it, and you must be aware of what it takes to build these things. So I'm going to ask you both these questions. Firstly, if you're running a lean GTM RevOps setup, you can't afford CRM Decay because it's inevitable, because the data is going to be historically that's flowing the system of records it's going to be tarnished. So is the future of CRM headless? Almost certainly headless. I actually don't want reps to go into the CRM and contribute to the decay, is what Nikunj is saying. So Abhijeet, your take on headless?
Yeah, I'm a big believer of headless. We actually built the whole foundation of Nektar as a UI-less headless system when we started in 2020. And that originated from my experience running like the previous startup I was part of, where we used to run into a lot of scattered data across different systems. In the board meetings, we'll struggle with like insights that we needed. And always like scrambling last minute for that Monday meeting. And we realized that like all of it was human dependent data generation within CRM. And that would not happen, right? If you ask humans to go and use a UI, because sales, you check job description of every seller, nowhere you'll find that CRM data entry as a task in the job description, right? So like sellers are not incentivized or they should not be incentivized to update the system, right? The system should work for the human, not the other way around, right? So that was our fundamental insight. So we went with headless from day one. Headless like become more popular with Salesforce announcing headless 360 earlier this year. And with agents coming in at forefront, where your system of action might become Claude or OpenAI or any of the other systems. And with, on the other hand, you're also seeing data warehouses like Snowflake or Databricks becoming also more prominent, where data is flowing from CRM into like this big data lakes where multiple data sources are filling the data. I think headless is the way to go. So I think a big validation that we are seeing in the market. I think from a RevOps standpoint, coming back to the question, I think if you are running a lean team, it's even more important that you think agent native, AI native from day one. You can't afford to like rely on humans. And in small companies, they're even more crunched with regards to bandwidth. So you need to make sure that like you have automated systems coming in from every step of the deal management process, right? From lead to cash. And now with AI, you can either build or buy. I mean, that's not a problem. But to point like what Shantanu and Sravan made, I think it should start from like, what's the use case, right? What's the business problem that we're trying to solve? And I think if RevOps can actually document that journey, what is that customer's journey across different touch points, and how we can reduce friction in that journey, both externally and internally, and then design the AI workflows around it. I think that would be the best way to go about like running a lean RevOps team, which is AI native. From a CRM standpoint, Salesforce itself is going headless. There are a lot of AI CRMs are coming. There are a lot of companies on top of like CRMs who are making either CRM work better like Nektar, or like there are other AI systems which will generate data on top of like CRM or data warehouse. So lots of options exist, but the key there is that think about like the business value and then like go for the automation. Yeah.
Thank you, Abhijeet. And the last question goes to you, and we will ask the last question, and it's from Rajesh. The barrier to entry to building has never been low, which means there are many tech vendors pitching RevOps. You've heard that, I'm sure. How are you separating the signal from the noise? Bandwidth crunch is real. Innovation out there is going at breakneck speed. So how would you separate the signal from the noise?
It's a tough problem. I mean, I feel for RevOps. If I'm in their shoes as a buyer, it's so confusing. There's almost everybody is talking the same language, and with AI, everybody is generating like the content AI slop that Shantanu talked about. So it's very difficult. It's super noisy. Again, I think the key thing is not to look at what others are doing and just get influenced by it, because what worked for one company might not work. So contextually look at examples which are similar to yours, and then see how they solved it, whether they built or they bought. I mean, of course, running a tech company, I have a little bit of bias towards like what might work better. But my input is coming more from like the customers we have worked with, where they have seen a lot more value on freeing up the resources and being able to work on more strategic things rather than like working on data wrangling stuff, which can be automated to a great extent. For an enterprise, I think models and agents are going to be commodity, right? Whether you use like a specific model from a specific company, or you like build data cleaning agent, or you build like a lead qualifying agent or a sales handover agent, stuff like that, they'll all be commodity. What will differentiate an organization is your own enterprise data, because that's core to you. Your own customer relationship data would be core to you. So my advice to all enterprises and all our customers and prospects has always been invest in like harvesting your own first party data. That's very valuable. And that is going to be your moat, right? And that is what will feed your AI systems and your AI processes, and would differentiate you from like your competitor.
Thank you. With 4 minutes late, so I'm going to say a big thank you to the audience for staying on for a little longer. Sravan, thank you very much for your time and sharing your insights as a customer. Shantanu, thank you for sharing your insights also as a RevOps leader in the industry. And Abhijeet, thank you for sharing what you're doing in building this product. So appreciate everything. Thank you for your time. Have a good evening. Have a good day. Bye-bye.